דג'אני, הרחוק ממני, יעד יגאל ופרופסור אייל וינטר. פרופסור דג'אני הוא מנהל המכון ללימודים אמריקאים באוניברסיטת אל-קודס. הוא מייסד תנועת ווסטיה, תנועת דרך האמצע. הוא עמד בראש משלחת של סטודנטים פלסטינים שביקרה לאחרונה באושוויץ-בירקנאו. פרופסור וינטר הוא ראש הקתדרה השם סילצברג צווייג, קשה לי השם, במרכז לחקר הרציונליות באוניברסיטת תל אביב, לשעבר באוניברסיטה העברית, לשעבר ראש המרכז לחקר הרציונליות וראש המחלקה לכלכלה באוניברסיטה העברית. הוא זכה בפרס המבולט מממשלת גרמניה ומרצה בכיר בכמה אוניברסיטאות חשובות בעולם, רשימה לא קצרה. אני אגיד משהו בקצרה, כי פרופסור וינטר כתב מאמר בארץ בעקבות הביקור הזה, וכך הוא כותב: אירוע זה יקבל להערכתי מקום חשוב בספר ההיסטוריה של הסכסוך הישראלי-פלסטיני. הרבה יותר כנראה מזה שיקבל למשא ומתן הווירטואלי בין ישראל לרשות הפלסטינית בתיווכו של ג'ון קרי. על קשריו עם פרופסור דג'אני, אני מכיר כבר יותר מ10 שנים אותו. באותם ימים חיפשתי עם עמיתי מגרמניה, ריינהרד זולטן, חתן פרס נובל לכלכלה, שותף מחקר פלסטיני למחקר השוואתי על אמון ואמינות בין ישראל והפלסטינים. העבודה המשותפת נהפכה לידידות, ודג'אני הכיר לי את חברה בתנועת ווסטיה, שהקים תנועה פלסטינית הקוראת למתינות דתית באי אלימות ולסיום הסכסוך עם הישראלים מתוך כבוד הדדי. הוא שיתף אותי בקריאתו לבתי הספר הפלסטינים לפתח תוכנית ללימודי השואה. בקצרה באנגלית בשביל אורחנו. Good evening all and welcome to Memory Forum at Yad Ben Tzvi. Our subject tonight is doing peace from the bottom up. We are delighted to host Professor Mוחמד דג'אני, who is the head of the Institute of American Studies at Al-Quds University and the founder of the Al-Wastiyah movement, which is the Middle Road movement. Recently, Professor Deg'ani led a delegation of Palestinian students to Auschwitz-Birkenau. This is the second time he is our guest. Last time was about 10 years ago, and we hope that the third time will be sooner. Professor Eyal Weinter, our other guest, is the Silver Zweig Professor of Economics at the Hebrew University and the former director of the Center for the Study of Rationality at the Hebrew University. Professor Weinter served as a chairman of the Economics Department at the Hebrew University. In 2011, he received the Humboldt Prize awarded by the government of the Federal Republic Germany. He has also held the senior professional position at various important universities. The collaboration of our two guests began 10 years ago with the joint research on our two societies and turned into a strong friendship. Recently, Professor Weinter wrote that the journey to Auschwitz will be more important in our history than the tiring present negotiation. Such a trip, he insisted, is not just an unprecedented step bearing huge meaning in itself. It is the trigger of a deep structural change in our society. We hope so. יגאל יאמר כמה דברים לפתיחה. אתה רוצה מהמקום או מפה? מפה. ואחר כך פרופסור אייל וינטר. בבקשה.
Good evening. 2 weeks ago, we commemorated again the Holocaust. My aunt, Rosa Pasternak, was a young, bright and beautiful woman who was taken from Budapest to Auschwitz in July 1944. She survived the hell and came back, deranged. A few years after that, she followed somehow her sister, my mother, to Israel. And those days, as you all know, there were hardly any institutes of a mental asylum. So she lived with us. And this is how me and my brothers, 2 brothers, grew up. She tried to commit suicide every now and then until she died. Tonight, we are hosting a man worthy of this title, who does not deny our tragedy. To the contrary, he took upon himself to educate Palestinian youth, to keep human values above every debate and even conflict, as hard and bitter as it is. These days he is exposed to delegitimation, hate, and abandonment in his own society for those values he stands for. Dr. Deg'ani, let me tell you in some humor that we all need to keep breathing. Welcome to our historical club. I say it both in empathy and humor. This is the cross of delegitimation, hate, and abandonment that we have been carrying for 2,000 years and still carry. And let me go on to some good news, if you want to consider them like that. What is happening now in the Arab world? Anti-Semitism is gradually becoming something directed not to their original carriers, culprits, but to the Arabs, one against the other. Sisi's mother is a Jew. Karadawi is shown with peyot, with those, and some teeth of an animal. Gaddafi, of course, is a Jew, and some Algerian minister is blamed of being of Jewish origin. The sentiment remains, but the object of the anti-Semitic hate is moving somehow. Still, the Jew remains the ultimate evil. You use him when you need even to address your opponents and enemies. We all deeply appreciate your work, Dr. Deg'ani, and I can only, on behalf of all of us, join Dr. Winther in his article in the, that, as I just quoted. I guess you will begin, and Dr. Deg'ani will be after.
אתה רוצה לקרוא?
Thank you, Iga. Very moving words. I want to start by telling you a little bit about my meeting with Deg'ani and the work that we did together. And then I want to portray, unfortunately, a very grim prospect for the Middle East or for the Israeli-Palestinian conflict. But within this grim picture, I want to suggest one spark of light that might, perhaps not in the next 3 or 4 years, but perhaps later on, change the situation. And this is connected to this title, From Bottom Up. I met Deg'ani, as Igal said, 10 years ago, when Professor Reinhard Zelten, a friend of mine, a co-author, a very renowned economist, and I decided to do some experiments on Israeli-Palestinian trust. I am an economist, but I specialize in a field called behavioral economics, which is the borderline between economics and psychology. Some of you might have seen the book that I published recently called רגשות רציונליים or Rational Emotions, בהוצאת זמורה ביטן. And I portray, I describe some of my research in the connection between thinking and feeling, especially in the field of economics, and including the works that I did with Mohammed Degani. And Reinhard Zelten, as I said, is a Nobel laureate, got the Nobel Prize in 1995. Asked me, maybe you have connections to people in the West Bank or Gaza. Maybe you can find somebody who can collaborate with us on this project. And I can tell you how difficult it was. I was virtually giving up on this project because any contact that I was trying, mainly in the West Bank, was a failure. It was a failure because people did not want to collaborate. People did not want to associate their name with somebody who is Israeli, somebody who works at the Hebrew University. And here it was Mohammed Degani that didn't see only the aspect of research in this project, but also the aspect of collaboration between Israelis and Palestinians. Joining forces together in something which is completely different, completely outside the conflict, was very attractive for him, and we started collaborating. And I was following Muhammad's work in Wasatiya for a long time until this event came with the visit to Auschwitz. And indeed, I believe that this is an event which is way, way more important than any of the events that we have seen regarding the conflict in terms of the peace process on any of the Israeli media, newspaper, television, or radios in the last probably 5 or 10 years. And I'll try to explain why. And then I'll give the floor to Mohammed. For about 20 years, earlier than Oslo, the concept of the peace process was top-down, mediated by superpowers, whether it is the United States, and then the Quartet, and then the Russians, and the Europeans, and whoever wanted to take part of it. The concept was that we'll force the two sides together into a small room, and we'll lock the room, and we will make them sign something that possibly they don't believe in, but we'll force them to do this. And then we'll take the document quickly from their hand before they regret it, and we'll publish it to the public. And we'll say to the public, listen, there's peace. Now you have to adjust your mind. Now you have to educate yourself to be different human beings, to have different mentality, different way of thinking about Israelis if you are a Palestinian, or about Palestinians if you are Israelis. This concept of making peace has collapsed altogether. It has never brought anything useful to the Israeli-Palestinian conflict. Has only brought misery to both sides. Okay? And if I want to project to the near future, it's only this concept is going to vanish completely. I believe the U.S., neither the U.S. nor the European, will have any interest in the near future to do anything regarding the Israeli-Palestinian conflict. The reason why they exerted so much effort in facilitating these negotiations was merely their interest in the global situation in the Middle East, including Syria, including Egypt, including Jordan, and so forth. There is nothing they can aspire now regarding the Middle East in general. Who knows what will happen in Syria in 5 months, whether it's going to be a dictator like Assad, which will rule the map, whether it's going to be Al-Qaeda, whether it's going to be some democratic party who will take over. Who knows what will happen in Egypt in several months from now? Is it going to be Sisi? Is it going to be the Muslim Brotherhood again? No one knows, and the Americans and including the Europeans will take their hands out of this conflict. They had a vested interest in establishing peace here because they thought that this will have an implication on other regions in the Middle East. Now they are not interested. They can't be interested for the near future in what happened they are interested, but they have no way to affect it. And they understand that what happens here has very little to do with what happens now in Syria and what happens now in Egypt and maybe another country to follow. Okay? So not only this concept has totally collapsed, it collapsed to an extent that nobody will even try it in the coming future, in the foreseen future. Okay? Now the question is, are we going to go back to our normal life? By the way, there is no interest of forwarding this process from both sides. You know, the one very nice cartoon that I saw when Kerry left by Bierman is very much characteristic to the situation. There was a cartoon in which it shows Abu Mazen and Netanyahu together escorting Kerry to his airplane, and when he goes on board his airplane, they hug together and say, "Thanks God he's gone." Okay, that's very much characteristic to the way the two leaders are now acting in respect of the peace process. So now the question is, what would the public do? Will we go back to our business as usual? And this is a risk on both sides, because we Israelis are now facing a very prosperous era in the history of the country. We're discovering oil, our high-tech industry is flourishing, our economic situation is not bad, and we might be more segregated, we might be more isolated than in the past, but there is a risk that we will fall back into some sort of sleepy mood in which we basically forget that there is a conflict here. And a similar situation can happen in the Palestinian side, only that this will be a pot that will gradually boil to the extent that at some point it will be disastrous. So what can we do? And what I'm suggesting, and I think Mוחמד has similar views, but he will speak for himself. I'm suggesting that we should move from from top down to bottom up. Instead of getting the orders from the leaders, from the politicians, right, to change our state of mind, our mentality, and so converge to peace, we have to instruct the politician from the bottom up. And the way to do it is precisely to do initiatives like Deg'ani did. And one thing I had very wrong in this article that you've heard quotes from, is my initial reaction. I said in the article, Deg'ani is not the important aspect in the whole story. The most important aspect in the whole story is the reaction to the Palestinian population, to the Palestinian public. And at the time, I wrote the article too short after the visit. There was hardly any protest. I was following Muhammad's Facebook page, and this was too early for the protests to arise. After I published the article, things has become more public to the extent that an article appeared in the New York Times and Guardian and Washington Post, name it. And once it became such a well-known event, the very harsh reaction from the public in the Palestinian areas was frightening. One thing we did together, instead of going to places like this and talk about it, was to give an interview to the BBC, 1 hour interview in which people from the entire world could ask questions, and you could hear, you could see people from Saudi Arabia, from Gaza, from mainly from Arab country reacted and asked questions to this. You know, one prominent question was to Muhammad, why do you spend your time going to Auschwitz? Instead of going, you know, there's enough misery in the Palestinian side. Why won't you, instead of going to Auschwitz, simply go to Daesh? And so my answer to this person was, listen, it's enormously more important than a person like me go to Daesh and Muhammad Deg'ani goes to Auschwitz, instead of me going to Auschwitz and Muhammad Deg'ani going to Daesh. What you can achieve by flipping the roles is way, way more important than what we can do by constantly grieving about your own destiny and your own history. And this brings me to something that we Israeli can do in this respect, both to create this reciprocity and most importantly to diminish the enormous criticism that Muhammad is now facing among Palestinians, is to generate reciprocal activities. It generates activities that have a similar nature to what Deg'ani did. Not at the political perspective. We don't have to get politics into it. It's at the level of human being versus human being. It's at the level of empathy. Completely personal. Nothing to do with politics. And I think this kind of activity, when it carried out sufficiently often, both at the Palestinian side, and it's the first time that such an activity is taking place in the Palestinian side. When these kind of activities will flourish and be more frequent, I believe they have an enormous chance to do this job of bottom up. Thank you very much.
תודה לפרופסור אייל וינטר. Thank you, פרופסור וינטר. הכל בפרופסור דג'אני. Welcome.
Good evening. I'd like to start by thanking Memory for having invited me to speak here tonight. Also, I'd like to thank every one of you who took the trouble of coming over to. Also, I would like to thank you for taking the trouble of coming over here to listen. Many people ask me, how did you get involved with the issue of the Holocaust and why? Basically, back in November 2006, I was standing at the balcony of my office overlooking a checkpoint, and it was a Friday morning, and people were gathering in front of the checkpoint to go to Jerusalem to pray. And there were more than 500 people, and the soldiers of the checkpoint were pushing them back because they did not have permits, and they were from the West Bank. And the people were pushing, and the soldiers started to throw at them tear gas, and I thought that those are radical Muslims who actually maybe many of them who do not want to go to pray but want to make an event. And so I was expecting that there will be a clash, there will be shooting, there will be killing, and it will be a big media event. However, after a while I noticed that things cooled down, and it seems that there was an agreement that was done in which the officer at the checkpoint, they agreed that they brought in buses that took the people to Jerusalem. They took their IDs, people went to Jerusalem, they prayed, the buses brought them back, and they left. So every Friday they used that. So to me it was fascinating to see how this problem was resolved. The soldiers worried about security and about people carrying bombs or people going to not for the purpose of praying, and the Palestinians who just wanted to pray. So I thought that those are moderate people. They are moderates, and if they would have been radicals or extremists, they would not have accepted the deal. And like Aiyel, I teach also game theory, and I thought that this was a win-win situation in which the soldiers got what they wanted, which was security. At the same time, the Palestinians got what they wanted, which was to go to pray. And it was this made me think that okay, those Palestinians are Muslims, they are moderates. The question is, who represents them? If I would look at the Palestinian map, there are 50 parties which are secular but do not deal with religion, and there are 12 parties which are religious but radically religious, and so there wasn't one single one which is moderate. At that time, Hamas was elected, and people in the beginning thought that Hamas brought a glimmer of hope in order to change Palestinian politics from the one-party system to the multi-party system. However, Hamas ran for the elections, and on the premise of change, reform, accountability, slogans that Palestinians tickled them and they wanted change, they wanted reform, they wanted accountability, and as a result voted for whoever promised them that. In addition, some of them were promised to go to heaven if they voted for Hamas, so that was an additional bonus. However, they got elected, and the question is, once they were elected, suddenly instead of focusing on the Palestinian agenda of peace, they voted on their agenda of conflict. And as a result, many Palestinians were disillusioned because they felt we are starting from where we ended. So basically, that gave me the idea of starting Wasatiyya, which is an Islamic movement that calls for moderation, and it focuses on religious moderation in Islam. And it is, I used a quote from the Quran, which is verse 143 in Al-Baqarah Surah, which says, and God made you a moderate nation. And this verse 143 is in a surah that has 286 verses, so it comes exactly in the middle. And then when I started promoting that, I noticed that the problem was not about teaching moderation in Islam as prescribed in the Quran, but there is much deeper roots in the problem, because basically I saw my religion, Islam, being hijacked and being misinterpreted, and that our children are learning a totally new version of Islam. And this version of Islam called for a conflict between us Muslims and the Jews and the Christians, and promoted and took the Quran and twisted the surahs to show the conflict, to say that Islam has come as a reform movement because the Christians and the Jews has swerved from the road, and so God sent Islam in order to correct the road. And so in this sense that it came to replace the other religions, which is totally contradicting to the Quran. So from there I felt that there was it was very important for me to try to promote moderate Islam, in the sense that not that Islam is moderate, but that Islam is the religion, as a religion, has not come to replace the other. It has not come to clash with the other, because if that would have been the idea, it would have not come in pagan Arabia. It would have come in Jerusalem, where there were the Christians and the Jews to compete with them for the soul of the faithful. So, but basically it was sent to in Arabia to heathens who did not believe in God. And the Quran says that God has sent different messengers at different times to speak to their people in different languages. And so this is where it mentions Judaism and Christianity, and it mentions Moses and Jesus and others. And as a result, I started teaching that, and then came with a lot of difficulties from the community, who actually stood up to the way we were teaching this. Particularly, one of the things that shocked me most is the fact that the Prophet was misquoted to say that on Judgment Day Muslims and Jews will clash and fight, and then Muslims will win, and then a Jew will hide behind a tree or a stone, and the stone will speak to say that there is a Jew behind me, kill him. And then I found out that this is even being taught in our schools for our children. So it made no sense, and it actually totally contradicts the Quran. So when I started to raise issues about it, to say that this is not true, then I was immediately attacked to say I'm trying to promote Western Islam or American Islam, which is not true basically, but that was part of the problem. And then I was invited back in February 2011 to visit Auschwitz with 100, as Wasatiyya founder, with 100 other 50 leaders. And it was the first time I faced the issue of the Holocaust. I had been raised in Jerusalem, and I was taught in a high school, Friends Boys School in Ramallah for 12 years, where we never heard of the Holocaust. It was not in our curriculum when we studied history or when we studied politics or anything. And so to us the Holocaust was not. When I grew up and was in Lebanon, the Holocaust at that time was being portrayed as a Zionist propaganda in order to get sympathy, world sympathy, in order for the Jews to establish their state in Palestine. And as a result, people had either they denied it happened, or they claimed it is exaggerated, or that it did not happen to the Jews, or that it was part of the Second World War massacres. So many millions died, so this was part of that. So there was an effort. And then there was a linkage between the Holocaust and the Nakba. I mean, people thought that one was the foundation for the other. And this was the way I was. So when I went to Auschwitz, it was an awakening call for me. And I witnessed a lot of new data, new information for me that it was something that contradicted what I used to know. At the same time, it actually made me feel, where do I stand on this issue? As a result, I thought that I should not be a bystander. I have now come to know new information, and I have to pass on this new information and this new knowledge to at least to my students, if not to my community. I wrote an article, that was in February, I wrote an article with Robert Satloff, a friend of mine who was the director of the Washington Institute, which said, why should Palestinians learn about the Holocaust? And we argued in that article, why should Palestinians learn about the Holocaust from different perspectives? And it was published in March in the New York Times. The Palestinians did not have exposure to New York Times, so many of them did not read it. Those intellectuals who read it were very upset with me because they said, you should have written the article, why should Israelis learn about the Nakba? Or why should Palestinians learn about the Nakba? So that was the reaction there, but it didn't take much opposition there, basically because of the fact that not many people read it, and it was not translated into Arabic in the local press. Then I started looking for books in Arabic about the Holocaust, and then found 2 or 3 that actually did not reflect what happened in the Holocaust, but rather argued that the Holocaust was a Zionist propaganda, or that there was Nazi Zionist collaboration in order to push Jews to go back to emigrate to Palestine. So I collaborated with two colleagues of mine to publish a book about the Holocaust in Arabic, which I hope one day might be the textbook that will cover this topic. At the same time, we started to do some workshop among the work we do with Wasatiyah regarding the Holocaust and trying to teach about the Holocaust. When people ask me, why are you getting involved in the Holocaust, why don't you teach Palestinians about their own Nakba? My response was, I have been doing that for the last 50 years, and there are so many people, so many Palestinians doing this, but there isn't one single Palestinian teaching Palestinians about the Holocaust. Then the second question that students in high schools would ask me, why would you teach about the Holocaust when the Israelis ban teaching about the Nakba? And to me, I try to find simple answers. So I would say that I want you to do the right thing, and so if it is up to the other to do the right thing if they want to. But it doesn't have to be this mentality of the soup. We have this mentality of the soup that it should be quid pro quo. You teach about the Holocaust, I will teach about the Holocaust if you are teaching about the Nakba. And then people started to compare the Nakba with the Holocaust. So that also part of the education, what is the differences between them and how you should not compare between them, and that they are totally different events. And then I thought that it would be better not to talk only about the Holocaust, but rather about genocides in general, and then to talk about Rwanda, about other genocides, and then to include the Holocaust and the Nakba within that, in order people not to see it as if one event, and so to focus on it. So it was a methodology in order to break the wall, or to make to go through that. So basically, what happened that in the last 3 years, this is something that people do not realize, that this project has been in the works for 3 years, in which we, in collaboration between Friedrich Schiller University at Vienna, Tel Aviv University, Professor Ari Nedler, and Professor Shifra Saji from Ben Gurion University, and Professor Leiner from Tel Aviv, where we formed a team and we made the proposal to study empathy, the role of empathy in terms of reconciliation. And so the idea was to take 30 students, Palestinian students, to Auschwitz to see the suffering of the other there. At the same time, to take 30 Israeli students to the Daesh camp and to other camps to learn about the suffering of the Palestinians as a result of the Nakba. So this was both sides of the coin, and the idea was to see to what extent will empathy help in bringing people to see the other as human being rather than to look at the other within the political context of the conflict. So basically that was the idea. The Israeli, we also gave a course at the university to do that. At our university, at Al-Quds University, I gave a course. Actually, I gave it part of the American studies because we do not have courses about genocides. And so there was a course about religion in America. So to be fair to the students, the first class, I gave them a lecture about religion in America. And then I said, look, we are not studying religion in America, we are studying about values. And then we are studying about reconciliation. And then we are studying about genocides. And then we are studying about the Holocaust. Now, I don't want to teach about the Nakba because you already know about the Nakba, but I want to teach you what you do not know. And I want to actually introduce to you new areas of knowledge. And in this way, this will be a learning experience for you. So basically, and that's how we started. And then I made an announcement of asking for 30 candidates from the class and from their friends outside the class who would want to go and visit the Auschwitz. And I made it very clear that this is a joint project with Israeli universities. So if you are against normalization, or if you think of it as normalization, this is not something you would like to do. But from the beginning, you have to know that this is a project in which it is a scientific project. It's about learning, it's an education, and it has nothing to do with politics. The idea is not normalization, the idea is education. Though I'm not against, I'm for normalization. I don't favor the point of anti-normalization. So, but however, I did not want to impose that on my students, so I gave them the chance. Whoever would like to come would come. It was good that I did that because this later it came out to be that students were asked by the syndicate at the university whether they were coerced to go or whether I pressured them to go. And so it was good that I had 70 students applying, and then we selected by interview 30 students. So actually there was no coercion on anybody to go. So basically it was a learning experience for them because they flew in there, and it was nothing like what they expected. I made it a point before going not to teach too much or not to show films so that they don't have too much expectation, and then they go and see the ruins and the things. So basically the idea was to have them confront the reality on the ground and later to teach them about what has happened from other films that portrays the reality of the occasion. So we went there, and students, it was a learning experience on the level that they would never have learned about it, neither in a classroom or in a film. And and what was important were the small things that attracted so much their attention. One was that when we were walking into the Auschwitz camp, first actually we went to Krakow for 2 days, where we learned about the life of Jews before the Holocaust, and then before the Nazi came to power. And then we went 3 days to Auschwitz, and we stayed there at a dialogue center. And one of the things that one of the students was observed is that when we walked in, there was this sign that says, Arbeit makes you free. And So she asked me about it. She said, what does it mean and why is it there? So I said, go look it up, and you find it. I don't have easy answers for you. So she went, there was a bookstore that sold books about Osage. She went and bought a book, and then she opened it, and the first thing that attracted her attention was a statement in the book by the commander of the camp in which he was welcoming Jews and others coming into the camp, saying that they should lose hope because the only way they will go out is through the chimneys of the crematorium. And so she was telling me about it, and I saw, and then my response was, now you know some differences between your Nakba and their Holocaust. Other things that attracted attention was something like there was an orchestra playing, and it was so morbid that in such a camp that there was that they would make an orchestra play and things like that. And other things that, and there were many things that actually attracted. One of the things that also they noticed that there were so many other groups from different parts of the world, and so one of the question was, why not us? And why there were groups from Japan, from Latin America, from different parts of Europe. And so the question, but not a single Palestinian, or there were the Palestinian, but there wasn't any single Arab group there. So the question also, why is it that there were no Arab groups there? It was to them an awakening experience also, and you can see it from the comments they had. One of the students told me, was saying in the meeting we had to meditate about what happened. She said that, I thought that Nazis gathered Jews in the camp in order to send them to Palestine. So I said to him, now you know better. And so basically, here, the issue is my experience from what happened is I noticed that because this was not the first time that I have taken our students to learn about the Holocaust. We had a project with Oberlin College in which we had 15 Palestinian students going to Oberlin for 3 consecutive years, with 15 Israeli students from Tel Aviv University and 15 American students to study democratic culture at Oberlin College for 2 weeks, and then they went to Washington to visit Washington. In Washington, the first year, we took them to visit the Holocaust Museum, and it was a bad idea to have the Palestinians with the Israelis, and that was a learning experience for me when we went on this trip, because the Israelis wanted to take both groups together, and I was objecting to that, because when we were in the Holocaust Museum, Palestinians will look at the pictures or the prisons or the towers, and then they will talk about Israeli prisons of today, or they compare particularly if any of them were in jail. And so I did not want, and the Israelis were very upset about that. So basically I did not want to repeat the experience. My explanation or my input in this was that the Palestinian, when they look at the Holocaust, they zoom in on the small picture in which they see a prison, or they see a tower, or they see guards, and then they compare that with the Holocaust, with what's happening in Palestine and the occupation. The Jew, when he looks at the Holocaust, he zooms in on the big picture that this was the Holocaust meant the annihilation, the final solution for the people, for the culture, for them as a nation, as a religion. And so here I felt that my role as a teacher is how to bridge both views, how to have the Palestinian be in the shoes of the Israeli to see what the Holocaust means to him. At the same time, how to be in the shoes of the Israeli to see how the Palestinians see it. so that they will understand where each comes from, and they will not think that they are comparing or that there is a comparison between the two events. And in this way, I was trying to help and alleviate the conflict between both, so that they do not, whenever one mentions something, then particularly, for instance, one of our students were in jail, and then she was looking at, and when she was trying to remember her experience, and I was telling her, please don't do that, don't think of that, just learn about what has happened, what your experience, what is your nakba, leave it for something else, but we are not here to compare or to learn, and try to take yourself out of that. And that's where actually it is difficult for the Palestinians to do, but that's where what I believe they should do, and that's what didn't happen when we came back. When we were there, the last day, Haaretz published an article about the trip, and it would have been okay because it was in English, and the Palestinian, it would not have left much impact within the Palestinian community, but Al-Quds newspaper published that article in Arabic, translated that article and published it in Arabic. And part of the problem is that the way it was written in Arabic, it catered to the Arab audience. And it fed the beast what he wants to eat. And so what they wanted instead, for instance, in Haaretz, the article said that the students were hosted by 2 Holocaust survivors, and then this sentence was translated in Arabic that the trip was funded by 2 Jewish organizations. And then it avoided mentioning, the Arabic article avoided mentioning the fact that it was a German-Israeli collaboration, and then said it was organized by the Tel Aviv University, and it became a conspiracy. It was a conspiracy in which Deg'Ani was taking students to be brainwashed in Auschwitz, and this was started to be reflected in articles in response to the article in Arabic at Al-Quds, to the extent that it eventually became so incitement, and then it jumped from a very political issue to a personal attack against me. And the problem is, I feel that there were some efforts to guide that, to build up. There was a failure in the negotiations. So in order to divert attention from the political failure there, so it was very nice to find the scapegoat and to make, to actually try to build up an issue out of nothing. And so efforts to clear, to say that this was an educational trip, did not work. And then I started even trying to resort to religion in order to say and to use the Quran to say, look, the Quran says, the verses in the Quran say, and God advanced me in knowledge. And so this is to advance my students in knowledge. Or to say, look, this is not the first time I did it. I took students to Turkey for a conference on peace education. I took them to Brandeis University. I took them to Oberlin College, to the United States. And so this was part also, but this did not help also. Also, I started quoting the Quran, saying the Quran says, and God does not make, and God and people with knowledge are not the same as people without knowledge, or that God loves people with knowledge, or that the Prophet said, seek knowledge from cradle to grave, or the Prophet says, seek knowledge in China, even in China. And I said, look, I'm seeking knowledge in Poland. So if the Prophet, but nothing of this word, and people did not want to listen. And then it became so personal, the attack, that some of the students came to the library where I'm the director of the library and wrote posters that I should go out, that they don't come, or that we do not want normalizers around, or we are against normalization, and that this was. And then the problem became much more with the syndicate or the union, which fired me from its membership, in which I'm not a member. And so this was actually, I saw the president of the union a day before, and I was telling him I would like to have a meeting because I saw that his people were going around to my students saying, write us a statement that Degani coerced you to go there, and he said he will fail you in the course. And then the students refused and said, no, we went because we wanted to know, wanted to learn. And so I was telling him that what you are doing is not proper. I'd like to sit with the union to explain that this was an educational trip and this is part of knowledge. And we cannot keep denying, we cannot keep ignoring, this is immorally wrong to deny and also factually wrong. This is a historical, and we cannot keep hiding our head in the sand and say it did not happen or this is a propaganda. So basically it is my role as a teacher to enlighten my student. And I asked him if I could meet with the union. And so I was shocked to know that the second day the decision was taken that, and then said that they fired me from the membership. And then the problem is they did not send the statement to me. They sent it to the press and they sent it to the president, to the vice president, to everybody. But there was no mention in the letter that they issued related to me, as if I'm not part of the being fired there. However, I wrote them a statement saying that this does not mean that you will not scare me into stop taking. If I will have the opportunity, I will do it again. That you are not going to teach me what I should teach, and you are not even qualified in whatever qualifications you have. Because we have what problem we have at the university is that the professors and the employees and the workers are put in one syndicate. And so basically I was being judged by my secretary and by others. And so that was part of the problem. So I was telling her, my secretary, I said, what do you know about education for you to judge what I did? And as a result, I need to actually be part of such a decision. Problem, I was the one who put her in that position. And this was the problem, that it was politicized much beyond its size, and it became such a big issue. And the more the newspaper wrote about it, the more I was being accused that I'm inciting. They will tell you, there is a newspaper publishing articles about what happened. They will say, look, you are making us look bad. I say, you make yourself look bad, not me. What do I have to do with you? You are the ones who actually made all this uproar. Why? And now you are blaming me. Also, I understood from some of the people around President Abbas that for the last 2 years he was thinking about about making a statement about the Holocaust, and then when he saw the international reaction, he was encouraged to make that statement. However, when Netanyahu did not respond positively, they blamed me that as if I put him in that position, and so I'm being blamed now for all the ills of society. For tomorrow, I will be even being blamed for the occupation and for all that's taking place here. But however, I believe that, like I said to them, I believe that I'm doing the right thing, that I will not be a bystander. I will continue with my work the way I believe I should teach, and in order to advance knowledge as instructed by my religion and by other religions, and so to focus about the values rather than the politics. And I feel that if we keep knocking on that wall, there is a crack now on the wall, I feel that they asked me that if I would just stop what I'm doing, that they might reconsider. And I said, no, I don't want it one for one. I don't want it that you reconsider because I will stop teaching about the Holocaust. That will not happen, because now I see a crack, and I would like to keep hammering on that crack until that wall falls. And I'm sure that one day it will fall. Thank you very much.
תודה לפרופסור דג'אני. Thank you very much, פרופסור דג'אני. questions, שאלות, like that. יגאל, אתה רוצה לשאול? בבקשה. ונתחיל. תתחיל, הראשון. מנחם.
I want to commend Professor Deg'ani. I want to commend Professor Deg'ani for what he said and thank him for what he said. I have been following carefully in being involved and participated in discussions between Jews and Arabs about the Arab-Israeli, the Arab-Jewish conflict in this country since I was 16, which is 64 years ago. So for many years I have been a student, a participant of the subject which you have discussed today. And from that vantage point of 64 years, I want to thank you, because I think that what you said, both in contents, in tone and style, is extraordinary and unique in the best sense of these words. And I wish you strength and power and energy to continue the important educational work that you are doing. Thank you very much.
And now to the hard stuff. Dr. Deg'ani, it's really hard for me to relate in a critical way to anything you do. First of all, because as a Jew, I understand what you go through, and we at Memory follow that. But still, I must relate to it. The word of truth must be said. When you, and again you too, when you bring together two things, even for the sake of education, even for the sake of teaching people what are the differences, you inevitably create a situation of comparing. You know better, both of you know better, that the Nakba cannot be compared to the Holocaust, that the Heysha cannot be compared to Auschwitz, and this is the whole thing. This is what it is all about. And I know how tough it is. I know you began differently. You slided to this to make it easier for the students, not for yourself. But then you encounter the problem that they inevitably compare. And this fails you at the end, because it creates a stronger feeling that this is not the right thing. So I can't say that I have an answer to that. Maybe time will make it, after you make this huge breakthrough, it will be easier to teach it separately, totally separately. But for now, it remains a problem. And to end, I want to say where I disagree with Eyal's article. He mentioned here that Professor Deg'ani is not the issue, there is something more important. No. Professor Deg'ani is the issue, it is the whole thing.
כן. דני.
Professor Deg'ani, first of all, I'd like to express my utmost admiration for your
בוא תדבר מהמיקרופון. Danny is a research fellow at memory. דבר למיקרופון, תחזיק אותו. תכופף אותו אליך.
Professor Deg'אני, I'd like to express my utmost admiration for your courage. I have no words to express how much I appreciate it. I'd like to ask you about Wasatiyah, the movement that you founded. How many people can you count as supporters or followers? How do you attract more people? Apart from the incidents that you described, what other feedback or reactions did you get from the Palestinian Authority? It's many questions, but one last one, a theologian one. You mentioned the hadith, famous hadith, "La taqum as-sa'a hatta yuqatil." Judgment day will not come until Muslims fight the Jews. On purely theological grounds, how can you fight the people who bring up this hadith, since I think that this hadith is mentioned in the Sahih Bukhari or Muslim, one of the canonical hadith collections? That's my question.
I suggest you write down the question because there will be many, and then summarize the answers. בבקשה, תגיד את השם. אבן גבאי, בבקשה, לא צאתי לך.
Speak Gabay. I was born in the Arab country, and I felt how Muslims in that country, happened to be Iraq, treated the Jews. Now Jews left Iraq and came here, leaving their property behind and all their belonging. No Jew remained in Iraq, maybe 5 Jews. Now that is for us, Jews from Iraq, Jews from Egypt, Jews from Libya, it is also a Nakba. I deeply appreciate what you are doing. I deeply appreciate your courage, and I appreciate that you are teaching. But to my mind, I know that some Arab might relate to that Nakba of the Jews, in quote, than more to the Holocaust, because the Palestinian rightly say that we are not responsible for the Holocaust, but the Palestinians are responsible for what happened to the Jews from Arab countries. Luckily, the Jews from Arab countries are here and are happy to be here, but they left everything behind. They suffered a great deal in the Arab countries. That picture, that part of history is lacking not only among the Palestinians, but I'm sorry to say, among the Israeli, ourselves here. Thank you.
Advocate Bill Morgenson, what to your mind do you think should be a comparable Israeli initiative? Howard? My question was, what do you think should be a comparable Israeli initiative?
בבקשה. שמך.
Hi, my name is Maya. I'm a PhD student at the Hebrew University.
דברי לנו, דברי עם המיקרופון.
אני אדבר בקול הזה, אני לא רוצה מיקרופון. Hi, my name is Maya. I'm a PhD student at the Communication Department at the Hebrew University. I have one comment for Professor Deg'aani. First of all, thank you very, very much. I'm truly deeply impressed. I think the mentality of the souk, the tujara, is also, you can apply it on the Israeli society, and it connects to the concept of zero-sum game in the conflict. You step on me the minute I speak about the Holocaust, and I step on you the minute I speak about the Nakba. So I'm sure your movement is trying to solve it. So this is just a comment that the mentality of the souk is also the Israeli society. And I do have a question for Professor Weinter. Did you got any comments, negative or positive, from fellows at the Hebrew University or other Israelis? What kind of comments did you receive?
תודה. בבקשה. מה? בבקשה, סליחה. כן, בבקשה.
I want to discuss the history about both my parents becoming orphans in the Holocaust and knowing all about the Sephardic Jews who came here because of what happened amongst the Arab nations. The future lies that all the Muslims are going to be killing each other across the Muslim world, and the bottom line is if we don't build our Beit HaMikdash, our third temple, we'll never have peace. We start on Halabayit. Achrei Halabayit, we'll deal with the rest of humanity. Until we rebuild our third temple, we'll never have peace.
A question.
What is the question? Okay. The comment. Okay, thank you. כן, בבקשה. תירגעו. Relax. בכל רע.
First of all, I have to comment here on two things. One, I don't blame the Palestinians on what happened to the people in Iraq or Egypt or Morocco. I blame the Arab world what happened. But not
because of them, no?
I can speak for myself. Thank you. Now, that's one thing. I don't really, I don't connect with the things that this guy, I don't know, I couldn't get the name there.
You're fine.
Doesn't matter. Doesn't matter. Now, one thing. First of all, there's a question about on a personal level. Do you feel also hate from the people which are very close to you? I mean, family, your neighbors. Is it just just some minimal amount of people which must talk to you on a political level, or is it just a broad attitude towards you? That's one thing. I really believe in the possibility of also bringing bottom up, but I think that it's very important to look at things as they are, and I think you're in the right way. I don't think you are in the right way, but that's a different conversation.
Thank you. תודה. בבקשה.
Weinter, Hebrew University.
Again, please.
Weinter from Hebrew University Medical School.
בוא תדבר ב...
Take the microphone. Take the microphone.
Weinter, Hebrew University Medical School. I first want to tell this group how grateful we were at the university, at the medical school, for Professor Deg'ani's lecture to the medical students on Yom HaShoah, well attended during a lunch break, mind you, a lunch break, and which many of the themes presented here were presented to the students with a deeply respectful and thoughtful set of responses and questions. One question. Fast forward from the Holocaust and all other genocides to today. As anyone following the pages of memory knows, we see that in the world around us today, the recycling of the same motifs that led to the Holocaust, which are so endemic and pandemic, cradle to grave in the world around us. I teach the prediction and prevention of genocide. And the message I teach is, tell me what you're teaching your kids, and I'll tell you what it'll be in 10 to 15 or 20 years. Tell me what you're teaching your university students, and I'll tell you what it'll be in 5 years, because these are the people who are moving into positions of power. As someone interested in prediction and prevention, I think we have to go beyond empathy to operationalizing the lessons of what went wrong in terms of the horrible emergence of dehumanization and demonization which led to the Holocaust, and the way populations all around the world are similarly prepared to carry out similar acts of brutality today. So I think this is the educational challenge that is before us, not only to make house calls for empathy, but to start getting into the business of operationalizing prediction and prevention in terms of countering all these horrible motifs and teaching alternative ways of life and respect for life and so on.
זהו? אוקיי, אחרון? The last one.
I want to ask a question with the face to the future. How could you enlarge the cycles of people who are active and who are with hope towards such initiatives, not only about history, but maybe also about renewables energy, maybe also about water, maybe also about some other stuff that we can really enlarge the cycles of people who are at this bottom and want to go up, because there are many cynical people, many frustrated people, and you're talking to mostly easy public. So this is the question for the both of you.
זהו? Professor דג'אני, this is the problem of pioneers. They start and then everyone put on them all his stuff, I mean, all the responsibility.
Yeah, but we learn the lesson of throwing back.
Okay. You can answer from your seat, both.
Actually, regarding the hadith, I've written an article that I was trying to publish but could not have it published, in which I made 30 points from the Quran to contradict that hadith is not a hadith. And actually the Prophet has said, if anything attributed to me and contradicts what's in the Quran, so it is not true. So basically I have 30 points to say that's not true. Also regarding the wasatiyah, we try to promote it through workshops, through going to schools, to talk to young people, through distribution of books for free, through publishing in the newspapers about what Islam is. And it is very well received, because there is only Hizb al-Tahrir which denies there is moderation. It says there is la wasatiyya fil Islam, there is no moderation in Islam, that it is either you are right or you are wrong. But the rest actually believe that al-wasatiyya din Islam, wasatiyya is the religion of Islam. So basically, but the problem is that even you find someone like Hania saying that Hamas is wasatiyya. That's another problem. So basically, also with the comparable Israeli initiative, I will leave it to the Israelis to think of a comparable Israeli initiative. With regard to the people around me, actually they are very supportive. They worry about my security, so I keep receiving emails, don't go to the university, don't do this, don't do that. But it doesn't mean, I think that there was, it was seen that as if all the Palestinians were against. That's not true, because there were also many Palestinians for, but unfortunately nobody talks about those who are for. There was a Palestinian, and one of the students published at the Atlantic article defending the trip. There was another student publishing an article in Arabic that was published in Quds newspaper, also defending the trip. There were others who I never knew who published articles supporting the trip, that this is knowledge and we should not be opposed to knowledge and all that. With regard to actually also our approach to peace, bottom up and up bottom, whatever it is, I believe that we need to have from bottom up to reach a certain stage, and then we need also to have up bottom, and we need also the government, so that we can meet in the middle, because I think it is important to have the bottom talk about peace in order for the people in government to use that as an indication what road they should take. Also, I feel that it is very important for our both sides, the media in particular. If we can also, we look at the media and then we see only the negative side of what is happening. Although there are so many positive sides happening, we do not know about. And for instance, I would encourage the Palestinian press to go to Ain Karim, for instance, and write an article about how many Palestinians there are receiving medical help, for instance, to show a positive side of the image of the other, rather than to talk about what the settlers did this, the soldiers did that, and so focusing on the negative side of what is happening. But rather, there are so many positive things that are happening between our two people on both sides, and we never report about that. And I think we have also to bring that up in order for me to look at the other and see a human being rather than seeing an enemy or a stereotype image or my perception of the other.
Thank you, Mוחמד. Take it one by one. First of all, concerning my article, I said Mohammed Dajjani is not the issue. It's the Palestinian public which is the issue. And I'm standing by this sentence. If Mohammed gave the description of a crack in the wall, which I also said in my article. There's a crack in the wall. I actually cited Leonard Cohen in this verse. Mohammed is a person who has done the crack, but without the crack becoming into a hole through which both Israelis and Palestinians could walk, there would be no meaning. So that's what I meant. The Palestinian public is the issue, also the Israeli public. Now, let me say a few things about your question, about the reaction from the Israeli side. So I think, and we are fortunate about it, the reaction about, of course, it's not comparable. I mean, Dajjani did something which way more courageous than my article. My article had no comparison with what Mohammed did. Most of the people reacted very positively, but not all the people reacted positively. And it's not a surprise that there are nuts in both sides of the border, and some extremely nuts. I can cite you one of the comments that my article got, obviously Israeli. He said, Mohammed Dajjani and his student went to Auschwitz to learn the job. To learn the job. And it's deep driving crazy, but this is not a reason to give up. How can we do comparable things? We Israeli, there are lots of ways. Mohammed gave Mohammed mentioned Ain Karim, Hadassah Hospital. Fortunately, I was bringing my mother a couple of months ago. She was hospitalized at Hadassah, and Hadassah and hospital in general in Israel is enormous incubator of living together, Israelis and Palestinians. It's unbelievable when you see a Palestinian and his family on one bed, and nearby an Israeli and his family, and people who go out of the hospital after being admitted in and experience it, come out, I tell you, they come out from my mother experience, they come out different people. And this is what I was talking about. Mohammed mentioned empathy. This is the kind of initiative that we are hoping to see more. It doesn't have to be political. It's like going doctors going to hospital, which already exist, I guess. Doctors going to hospitals in the West Bank, in Ramallah, and perhaps in Gaza, and places like this. As much as it is permitted by schools that Israeli teachers, I'm prepared to do it, Israeli teachers go and give a class to students in something which is completely unrelated to the conflict. Okay? I think these kind of activities will be a good response to what Muhammad did. They obviously are less dangerous, but they are as much important and as much needed as what the Deg'ani did. Thank you.
Thank you both. It was very interesting and very important and very impressive. And we have a small gift for you, both. תודה רבה, אפשר למחוא כפיים.
Thank you. Thank you very much.
Thank you.